let's look at some of the ways you can create and use procedural masks and geometry specific masks. So let's start with procedural masks. If you set up a noise map in the diffuse slot of your basic Vray material and assign it to an object, and then turn on the preview, you're going to see that the size of the noise doesn't really match in what you see in the material editor and what you see in the viewport. Okay. So if you render, you're going to see an even different result than what you get in the viewport. So the way you can try to fix it is by going to Options and changing the render sample size to 25. And this way the size of the noise will be quite a bit closer between material editor, the render, and the viewport. But the noise is still not gonna look exactly perfect in the viewport. So again, notice this little box on the top. It has some very tiny noise in the viewport, but it looks fine, and it looks fine in the render. And the only way to get around this is, at least the only way that I know of, is by using Solburn scripts by Neil Blevins. So go to neilblevins.com, find the Solburn scripts page, and just download and install these great free scripts. Okay, and once you're done that, just create a new toolbar and create a button for Text Map Preview UI script from that collection. Okay, so what it does, it launches this little dialog box where you choose what to render and which material editor to use. So for the classic or the compact material editor, choose the classic. Just click apply, okay, and you must have the map slot selected in the material editor, and it renders it out perfectly. So that's a great way to preview exactly how the map is going to look on your object. It's also great to quickly preview only the map you're working on if you have a very complicated material. Right, so now let's look at some types of procedural maps you can use with a 3D Max. So you have your noise, it's pretty basic. You have your regular, your fractal noise. You can adjust a few settings, but it's nothing that special and not too complicated. If you want some advanced noise, I suggest you install Berkan Maps plugin, which is free and open source plugin you can use, and it has some very advanced noise types included. So once you install the plugin, you're going to see that you get these additional maps available. So let's say I'm going to use Berkan Noise, discard my old map. And basically it's a noise, but it has a lot more options available. You can choose between multiple types of noise, and you can adjust some settings for them. Okay, so basically a lot of flexibility. You can change them to fractal type and use different types of fractals. And I find these are much more useful than the default 3D Max noise. You can also distort the map by using another map. So let's say you want to distort this map using some regular noise. Okay, just increase the distortion strength. And adjust the size of this noise map here. Okay. And you get all sorts of weird looking distortions. So Berkan Maps is Berkan maps is a great way to use some advanced procedurals, and I especially like the noise. Alright, so with the default settings, all these procedurals can look a bit boring. So what I usually do is I combine them using mix maps or composite maps to create some advanced nodes. So I'm going to switch to Slate Material Editor so you can see the structure of the material a bit better. So let's create a new Vray material. Okay, and create a composite map in the diffuse slot. Alright. So in the composite map you work just like you would in Photoshop. You have your layers, you can adjust the colors for the layers, you can create masks for the layers, you can change the blending modes, just like layers in Photoshop. So let's start with some basic noise as our first layer. Okay. Now let's set it at 5 for now, and let's make it more interesting by using a mix map here. And the noise is going to be our first color. The second color is going to be black. And we're going to mix it with some other noise. Okay, sorry, wrong map. We're going to mix it using some different noise. So go to that second one. Let's make it smaller. And play around with some contrast values. Alright, and this is the resulting mix. Looks a bit better than the default noise already, but let's make it more interesting by adding some more layers to our composite map. So for the first layer I'm going to use some Berkan noise. Change the size. Maybe try some different type of fractals. Play around with some settings. Okay, I'm gonna go for Worley. And okay, kind of like it. Let's make the bright colors stronger. You can do that by adjusting the noise threshold. So lowering this high value makes the white stronger, and increasing the low value makes the black stronger, just like using levels in Photoshop or other image editing or other image editors. Alright, so I like this map, and let's try some blending modes to mix it together with a lower layer. I kind of like the difference. Okay, if the text map preview doesn't work, change it to use Slate Material Editor, and now it should work. Okay, interesting map. Let's go on. Let's add another layer. And in that layer, I'm also going to use some Berkan noise. I'll reduce the size to maybe 10. And let's stick with the Berlin with some fractal options. Okay, this one is interesting. Let's up the levels. Alright, and let's increase the contrast. Okay, not bad. So back to our composite map, try some different blending modes. And I think I'm going to go with multiply. reduce the opacity to maybe 50, 60, okay, 70. All right, and then let's add a new layer, which is gonna be some basic cellulars. Okay, maybe change the colors a bit. Okay, just play around with the values until you get something interesting. I think it's a bit big, so I'm gonna reduce the size to maybe 3 and try some blending modes. Okay, screen looks fine. I'm gonna reduce the opacity a little bit. And actually I think my cellular is a bit low in contrast. So I'm gonna bring up those whites and go back to my composite map. Okay, let's bring down the opacity to 50 or 70. And I also want to use a mask for this layer. And for mask I'm gonna use some regular fractal noise. All right, and let's bring up the levels a little bit. So as you can see, this map looks much more interesting than what we started with. And if you combine these procedurals using some mixer composite maps, you can get some very nice looking results, instead of using them with the default settings. And I think this would look nice as a reflection map or as a bump map. So let's try it as a reflection map. And maybe blur the reflections a bit. And a nice patchy look. Okay, so that's how you use those procedural maps. You can get infinite variations of this map just by adjusting some options here, or changing some maps, or changing the blending modes, or adding another layer, or so on. Okay. And if you want, you can save this map to a material library and reuse it later on for different materials. All right. So that's the basic procedural map. Now, what I'm going to show you next is how to create geometry-specific maps or geometry-specific masks. So let's start with a basic Vray material. And the first map I want to show you is ambient occlusion, or Vray dirt. And I'm going to assign it to my diffuse map slot. Okay. Let's see how it looks with the default settings. Okay, and I find it easier to use a mask where the effect that I want is white instead of black, so I usually swap these colors around. So now the dirt will be white and the rest will be black. Okay, and you can adjust some parameters here if you wish. You can invert normals for assigning the effect to the outer edges. And you can make the fall off a bit contrast here by increasing the fall off value here and distribution. And this should bring the effect closer to the edges, like that. Right, and if you want to make the effect stronger, but keep it exactly the same. You have to overlay multiple of these Vray Dirt maps by copying the map and going in and pasting it in the unoccluded color slot a couple of times. And this should make the effect stronger, but keep all the settings the same. Okay, or you can go a different way and just run the map through an output map and use those color clamping options to adjust it. So the way this works is you go to your output, enable color map, and just add 2 points and adjust these points just like you would adjust levels for increasing contrast of the image. This should make the whites a bit stronger, but not... okay, the effect is a bit too dark, so I'm gonna bring the whites more to the left. And basically you can control the appearance pretty well using output maps as well. And usually I suggest you increase the noise subdues to at least 16 or even 32 to get a cleaner result. Okay, and if I also increase my render settings, it's going to look even better. Alright, so another thing you can do with Vray Dirt is you can shift it in multiple directions. So for example, if you want to shift it downwards on the z-axis, you use a positive z bias value. And you can see that it sort of leaks down from those outer edges. It works the same way for the normal version of Vray Dirt, which is not inverted, but usually these leaks come from the outer edges, so usually this is used with inverted normals. And you can also use these X and Y bias values to shift it left, right, or forward, backward. Okay, so that's the Vray Dirt. Okay, so the next map I want to show you is the fall off. Basically, the way you use it is by creating a fall off map and setting it towards away, and change the fall off direction towards the axis. And this is the way I use it for old materials where the dust is needed or splashes from the bottom or stuff like that. And when you adjust these pointers here, you want to make sure that the transition happens a little bit above the midpoint. I find that it gives the most natural effect. Right? And it's great for adding some dust or even some snow. Okay, and you can adjust the points if you want the effect a bit weaker, and it's pretty easy to do. Okay, so that's the fall off. Next I'm going to show you the curvature map, which is created by using the tension modifier. And to get this plugin, you have to go to rpmanager.com, and it costs $20 for commercial use, but it doesn't have any licensing, so if you do not use it commercially, you can probably use it for free. Right, so install that as well. And what it does, it takes your object and it, if you assign the tension modifier, okay, so the first thing I do is disable these tension options here and disable the relative to reference pose option, and then toggle on the vertex colors, and this is the result. Okay, usually I blur it a little bit by using a higher blur iterations value, and the result that it gives is the convex areas become green and the concave areas become red. You can adjust the strength of both colors here. And you can also adjust the contrast by changing the exponent values. Alright, and it's a great way to add some patina to convex or concave areas or wherever you need them. So the way you use it is you use it with a vertex color map. So let's create a vertex color map and set it to the diffuse slot. Okay, if you render it now, what you're gonna see is this basic result. But it doesn't really work that well as a mask. So what I suggest is that you change your vertex color options to use a channel, either red or green, and this gives a black and white mask instead of that colored version there. Okay, and if you wish, you can just run it. You can just run it through an output map. The same way that you would for Vray Dirt. And this should make the effect much stronger and much more concentrated. And you just adjust these little points here to get any effect you like. And it's pretty flexible. Right, and if you wish to use it with the concave areas, just change the channel to red. And now the mask affects only the concave areas. Okay. Let's change that back to green for now. And the final mask I want to show you is the gradient, and the way I use it is by adding a UEW modifier, making sure it's oriented vertically, or whichever way you need it. And just click this fit button to fit it exactly to the dimensions of the object. Alright, and make sure you change the mapping channel to a different number than the one you use for your textures. Basically any unused map channel. And then, for example, if you use a gradient in the diffuse map or in the mix map or wherever, you just go to your gradient, change the map channel to the one you used for this planar map, and the result you get is this. You can change the midpoint of the gradient however you want by shifting this second color position. You can also change the contrast by adjusting the output values here in the enable color map options. You can invert it. You can also rotate it, for example 90 degrees or 180 degrees or however you want. And it's a great way to add a mask to a specific side of your object. Okay, so with the default settings, all these masks look very unnatural and quite boring. So let's see how we can make them a bit more interesting. So let's say we have this vertex color map. Let's render. This is the result, and I want to make those white areas a bit more natural. And to do that, we're going to use a mix map. Okay, right here. And basically the vertex color is going to be the mix amount. And since I want to add the texture to the white colors, to the white areas, I'm going to set up either a bitmap or a procedural map in the white color slot. So let's say we're going to use the same procedural map we just created. Okay, just going to drag it down here so I can assign it over here. And basically now the white areas should use that texture, and the rest should be simply black. Alright, and you can also increase either the contrast of the whole map by adding an output map here, or you can adjust that composite map by running an output map in here. Alright, so let's try and bring up the contrast by creating a new output. Okay, turns out you don't need a map here. You can just adjust the output options here in the mix map slot, in the mix map output section. Some maps have this output section, some maps don't, so it's sometimes easy to forget which ones do and which ones do not. And you have this very interesting result along those convex areas. Okay, and once you're happy with the map, you can use it to mix together two colors, two textures, or whatever you want. So let's say we're going to use some greens and some dirty browns in those white areas. And this is the result. Okay, great. Right, and that's how you use procedural masks and geometry-specific masks in 3D Max.